Exclusive breaking news to bring you. Fulham have agreed a deal to sign Manchester City winger Oscar Bobb. Hi there, you're watching the transfer show. It's all kicking off in the last few minutes. Thankfully, Dharmesh Sheth and Rob Dorset are both here and they're going to give us all the details. One man on his way out of London is Lucas Paquetá. Flamengo and West Ham have agreed a deal for the midfielder to return to Brazil. Talking of Brazilians, Douglas Luiz's time at Nottingham Forest is over as he nears a move back to Aston Villa. But could Nottingham Forest be where Jean-Philippe Mateta ends up as he tries to leave Crystal Palace this month? But we're going to start with the breaking news regarding Manchester City winger Oscar Bobb. Dharmesh, what can you tell us?
Yeah, we've been reporting throughout this window that there have been talks between the two clubs, that a deal was close. They finally have reached an agreement, have Fulham and Manchester City, over the transfer, the permanent transfer of the winger Oscar Bobb. He'll move from Manchester City to Fulham for a fee in the region of £27 million. Manchester City have also retained matching right on any future offers as well. So if he was to be sold by Fulham, they could match any other buying club's offer for him, and then Oscar Bobb would then have a decision to make thereafter. But for now, he's on his way to Fulham by the sounds of it. 20% sell-on clause as well has been inserted. But the main crux and the breaking news we have now reaching us at Sky Sports News is that Fulham have reached an agreement with Manchester City for Oscar Bobb, and the fee is around £27 million.
Very talented young player, Rob. It sounds like a pretty good signing for Fulham, doesn't it?
I think it is a good signing for Fulham. And look, he's a real talent, but he's had very few opportunities, hasn't he? We know that he's been frustrated by his lack of game time. I mean, look, Pep Guardiola talks very, very highly of Oscar Bobb, but he's talked highly about a lot of young players that he hasn't managed to get in the starting 11 as much as he would like. Look at Cole Palmer, who left to join Chelsea, and Pep Guardiola has forever said, I think I missed a trick there. You know, we had so many good players, I couldn't fit him into the side. I wonder whether there's a bit of that with Oscar Bobb here, and Fulham have taken advantage of that. And of course, you know, with Marco Silva and his future up in the air in the summer, this sort of signing, I think, will keep him happy, will impress him. Maybe it makes a difference to him longer term. But yeah, a really, really good signing for Fulham, and a new start and a fresh start for Oscar Bobb, and I think he's been desperate for that.
And 27 million as well for someone so young. That doesn't sound like a load.
Yeah, that's true, but because he's had so little opportunity and he's had some injury problems as well, I think he's a bit untested. So I think it suits both parties. That's the impression I get. Look, in a few years' time, he could be worth a lot more than that if he gets a run of games with the talent that he's got and the way everybody speaks about him in football. But at the moment, I think 27 million sounds a fair deal for both sides, I think.
Yeah.
OK, Fulham are bringing in a winger then, but is the future of another of their wide men a bit in doubt at the moment?
Are we talking Adama Traoré here? I mean, because obviously
Harry Wilson, Adama Traoré, we know is gone.
We know Adama Traoré has gone. He's obviously linked up with Nuno Espirito Santo again. But yeah, in terms of that young star on the wide there, who's been doing so well for Fulham, Harry Wilson, you have to say that he's been absolutely outstanding of late. And it now looks increasingly likely that he's going to be leaving Fulham in the summer. When he's on a free transfer, he can leave without anybody paying a fee for him. And we know there are a lot of clubs potentially lining up for him. That's very, very clear. And of course, he is a real talent. If you look at the number of goals he's scored recently, 10 goal involvements since the end of November, 6 goals and 4 assists. That's in 14 Premier League matches. And remember, that's with a Fulham side that have been struggling of late as well. So I don't think there's any doubting his talent. He's still only 28 years old, which surprised me. He's been around so long. I thought he was a bit older than that. But yeah, I think if he goes to the summer and can walk away on a free, there'll be a lot of clubs that are interested in taking him. The interesting thing from Fulham's point of view is we've talked about them doing a good bit of business there for Oscar Bobb. They won't want to see Harry Wilson leave on a free. if they can get some money for him between now and then, before the end of the window, I think they'd probably jump at the chance, even though he's so important for them right now.
It's like the Mike Gay situation for Palace, isn't it? Very, very similar. We will come back to Fulham in a moment. It kind of ties in a little bit with West Ham as well. West Ham have been busy in this window. We've had some developments, Darmish, in the last hour regarding Lucas Paquetá.
Yeah, West Ham United have released a statement saying that they've given permission for Lucas Paquetá to have a medical with Flamengo. This has been rumbling on throughout this month. He made it clear that he wanted to leave West Ham United, but not only that he wanted to go back to the club where he started his career in Brazil, in Flamengo. And it looks like now he's going to get his wish. The deal has been agreed between the two clubs. We found that out earlier today, and that fee is around £36.5 million that Flamengo will pay West Ham United. Remember, he joined in 2022 from Lyon for over £50 million, won the Europa Conference League as well, one of the most memorable nights in West Ham United's history. But, you know, there's been a few issues off the pitch, in particular for Lucas Paquetá. There was the whole betting allegations, which, you know, not guilty, but the impact that it had on him. He actually spoke about the impact that it had on his mental health. And I think at that point, he just wanted to go back to Brazil. Yeah. West Ham United have actually said in their statement that they did try and convince Lucas Paquetá to stay. But once he had told them it is for family reasons and for personal reasons, that's when they thought, we're going to have to try and negotiate with Flamengo to try and get this deal that is good for Lucas Paquetá, but predominantly good for West Ham United. And to think about the length of time it's taken, it's pretty quick that this deal has really developed. And to get £36.5 million, some West Ham fans might say, look, it's less than what we paid. But given the circumstances and given the player wanted to leave, and given you can't really get a bidding war going for a player who has said he wants to leave but only wants to go to one club, £36.5 million is probably not a bad deal that West Ham United will look at it as.
Yeah. Rob, I mean, some West Ham fans will say, look, we're in a relegation battle. He's still one of our best players. You know, why can't you convince him to stay? But as he pointed out there, Darmesh, you know, when you've got the personal side of things, does that just completely change it? If a player wants out,
I think it is, and that's the very difficult. Look, he's missed 3 of the last 4 games, and there's been no obvious injury, I think, there. He's emotionally been in a difficult place. It's clear that he wants to go back home to Brazil. He wants to go back to Rio, where he's from, and Flamengo had this offer that he knew about in the last few weeks. But you look at the trouble he's had at West Ham, you know, since he arrived, really, that investigation, those charges from the FA, he started to be investigated in 2023. It was a 2-year investigation he had hanging over his head for alleged irregular betting practices. He was accused of taking deliberate yellow cards in 4 Premier League matches. And he was eventually cleared of that, but then the FA, a separate charge stuck where he hadn't cooperated with them, and that hit Paquetá very, very hard. He took to social media, he said he was upset, and of course we saw him get sent off, didn't we, for dissent. It looked very, very obvious in that game that he was clearly upset by the whole saga. The end of November, that was the 2-0 defeat to Liverpool. And a lot of pundits were saying, God, that's outrageous the way he's behaved. I think it told West Ham exactly where his mind was, how upset he was, how disorientated he was. So to go back to Brazil with his family was his wish. He's now got that wish. I think it suits both parties, but I can fully understand from West Ham's point of view that it's a hard one to take. He's an absolute fan's favourite. If you look at the video he's put on Instagram, just where he's saying goodbye to the fans, it's an extraordinarily emotional video. And I think he's had an emotional tie to the fans, but it hasn't been enough to stop him wanting to go back home.
Hasn't played in their last 3 games. One FA Cup game, 2 Premier League games. They went through in the FA Cup against QPR, and they've got 6 points from 6 in their last 2 Premier League games as well. I'm not saying that that's going to be the norm for the rest of the season without Lucas Paquetá, but they'd gone 10 games without a win in all competitions before then. So to win those 3 games, they will hope that that is a sign of things to come, of life without Lucas Paquetá.
Yeah. I mean, I guess West Ham fans won't be too surprised about this, given all the reasons that you guys have put forward there. But might be surprised that there could be a second midfielder leaving West Ham this month.
Well, this is interesting because earlier on in the window, Burnley had open talks with West Ham United over James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
Then, earlier on this week, I was told they are no longer pursuing that deal. 24 hours later, there was the U-turn, and talks had resumed, and a deal had been agreed for a loan until the end of the season. We understand now that he's having a medical with Burnley. We should get an announcement, a formal announcement from both clubs sooner rather than later if all goes well with that medical, because everything else, it seems, with that deal has now been agreed. It's been an interesting time, you'd have to say, for James Ward-Prowse. He moved from Southampton to West Ham back in the summer of 2023, and then he was loaned out to Nottingham Forest the August after, under Nuno Espirito Santo. He started 5 Premier League games for them, made 9 Premier League appearances for them. But Nuno, I think, wanted to go another way and decided, look, let's try and get a deal where he can go back to West Ham United, because I don't think I'm going to use him. So back he went to West Ham United, tried to revive his career there. At the start of this season, he was playing games. And then Graham Potter was sacked. And then who comes to become manager at West Ham United? I mean, James Ward-Prowse must have thought, how's my luck? Because this guy obviously doesn't rate me. And so we thought Ward-Prowse's career at West Ham United was going to be stalling again. Then he got placed on the substitutes bench against Sunderland over the weekend. And then you maybe thought, right, it's not going to happen with Burnley. And maybe he has got a future under Nuno Espirito Santo at West Ham United. But that was very short-lived, because everything changed. There was a U-turn. Burnley resumed talks again with West Ham. And now he looks like he's on his way to Turf Moor. So hopefully for James Ward-Prowse, it's a straight loan. He'll get first-team football throughout the rest of the season. And then in the summer, I guess his future will be reassessed again.
It's a really difficult one, because James Ward-Prowse has been one of the most consistent performances. He's one of those players when he was at Southampton. I think, didn't he or get close to the record for playing in consecutive matches? He was so consistent, never seemed to have an injury.
Well, he's close to that record.
That's the David Beckham record.
There you go.
Maybe 2 free kicks off it or something.
There you go. And now, the last 2 years for him have been utter chaos. Much of it not by his own making, and so there's a lot of sympathy for him. He's very highly thought of, not just for his talent, but the way he portrays himself, the way he acts around the squad. He's a leader. He's a very, very easy guy to work with, very, very professional. And so he will be desperate to just find a new home and start playing football again. And if this happens for him,
but why West Ham let him go to a relegation rival?
You could say that he's just not going to feature for them. So I guess West Ham United have to do what they feel is right. I'm sure West Ham United will be looking up rather than over their shoulders at Burnley. They've got to chase.
Careful.
They've got to chase. Well, they've got to chase clubs like Nottingham Forest and Leeds United and Crystal Palace, maybe. One interesting point I would make about James Ward-Prowse, we've mentioned the free kicks and the set-piece delivery that he has. In a season where we continuously are talking about the importance of set pieces, that's probably where West Ham United fans might be thinking, would it have been an idea to have kept someone like that, particularly because how important set pieces are just now, and there are very few better than him from a dead ball situation. But West Ham have made their decision, clearly not in Nuno's plans. Good for West Ham probably, and good for James Ward-Prowse.
OK, let's just finish off with one incoming to West Ham, and we mentioned Fulham there as well. Oscar Bobb, they've agreed a deal with Manchester City, but there is someone leaving in Adama Traoré.
Rob mentioned it earlier in dispatches. It is Adama Traoré. He has moved from Fulham to West Ham United. We think the fee is £1 million initial payment that could rise to £2 million. This is not a surprise. We shouldn't say this as a surprise. We've been talking about the relationship that Nuno had maybe with James Ward-Prowse, and he just didn't fit into Nuno's plans. Put this in the file of completely the opposite, because Adama Traoré and Nuno Espirito Santo have got a history. He played so well under Nuno, made such an impact with Nuno at Wolves, and this was one that they'd wanted to get done throughout this transfer window. The reason it has happened with, 6 days to go, or 5, how many days to go now? 5 days to go in this transfer window is because I think Fulham just wanted to keep hold of Adama Traoré for numbers purposes, simply because during January they lost a couple of players to the Africa Cup of Nations. And I think there might have been an agreement in the background that, yes, Adama, you can go, but it's going to have to be later in the window because we need to get the numbers back and we need the players who have gone to AFCON to come back and come back fit. Then you can make that move. And now that move has happened. As I mentioned, 1 million, that could rise to 2 million. Adama Traoré, West Ham United player.
Both West Ham and Fulham busy. Do you know what would be just the kind of luck that James Ward-Prowse is having at the moment is that Nuno becomes the next manager of Burnley before the end of the season.
Don't jinx it.
No.
Poor guy.
Hopefully not for him. Hopefully not for Nuno either. Right, coming up next, can Nottingham Forest pull off a sensational move for Jean-Philippe Mateta? Plus the latest on Villa's move to re-sign Douglas Luiz. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the transfer show. Liverpool are down to just one recognised centre-back for their game against Qarabağ tonight, with Giovanni Leone, Joe Gomez and Ibrahima Konate all ruled out. And with Dayo Upamecano potentially available on a free this summer, the Bayern Munich defender is firmly back on Liverpool's radar, according to Sky Germany's Florian Plettenberg.
Bayern Munich is waiting and waiting and waiting for weeks. They want to have a decision soon. And my personal opinion is that he is waiting for Liverpool, for Real Madrid. But there need to be a decision right now. And FC Bayern, they need to push in their squad planning. But they are very, very, very dependent from the yes or the no from Upamecano right now. But Liverpool is interested in Upamecano. We can confirm that.
Right, Rob, Liverpool ended up with Endo at centre-back against Bournemouth the other day. With injuries and other things, they do look very thin in terms of central defenders.
I think they're really struggling. Liverpool have got major injury problems in defence, and we can list them. Conor Bradley, we know about that long-term knee injury he's got. Giovanni Leone recovering from ACL surgery, and now Joe Gomez has picked up what seemed to be a hip or a rib injury, still being assessed. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. But look, far be it from me to criticise Liverpool, but I think they've been hit a little bit by what's happened with Mark Gay. Remember, on deadline day in the summer, Liverpool thought they were getting Mark Gay for £30 million as one of the best centre-backs in world football right now. Which would have been an absolute snip. They've lost out on that to Manchester City. He's now gone there for £20 million. If you look at the add-ons he's got, then it's about £30 million with the fees to the player and the agents. But for a player that's worth £80 million, that's a snip. And Manchester City stole a march on Liverpool there. My understanding was that Liverpool didn't really come back in for him, and there was maybe a lack of communication there. Liverpool's problems now, you look at it and go, well, I'm not sure that was great business. But they're definitely looking at Dayo Upamecano there. It was nice to hear from Florian Plettenberg, who makes that very, very clear. You can understand why. He's been a long-term target for them. And he's out of contract in the summer. And if he does sign this new contract from Bayern, it sounds like it'd be a 4-year deal with a €65 million buyout clause. I think that's what's on the table. He's not signed that yet. But if Liverpool could get him for a fraction of that now, and he is free, of course, in this month to speak to clubs abroad, with his contract expiring in the summer, then I wonder if they will. I wonder if over the last few days, and that's Liverpool's way of doing business, isn't it, in the transfer windows? They tend to come in late and just get a deal done. So if they did that with Upamecano, I think that would make sense. Their policy isn't to cover for injuries, because when those injured players come back, of course, they have a glut of top players, and there's no doubt that Upamecano is world class. But if they could get him at a bargain basement price, as they nearly got Mark Gay for a bargain basement price, you just wonder whether they might try and do that deal over the last 5 days of the window.
Yeah, and it does feel like that would be a statement signing as well. Let's get to Vinny O'Connor. He's at Anfield for us right now for Liverpool's game against Qarabağ. Hello again, Vinny. We've been talking transfers, but aside from that, this feels like a big night for Arne Slot.
It does feel like a big night. It feels like a big month for the club. You guys kind of touched on it there as well with the potential activity in the transfer window. I have to say the noises coming out of Anfield at the moment are very much that they're unlikely to do any business in terms of incomings as well. But certainly the centre-half situation is something that they need to address as well, because Konate is out of contract in the summer. Of course, not available to Arne Slot this evening, as we mentioned. He still remains on compassionate leave following the death of his father. But in terms of what Liverpool need to do tonight, well, yeah, you look at the mood around the place. It's 5 games without a win in the Premier League now.
OK. We've lost Vinny. Second time we've lost Vinny
Poor old
today.
Vinny.
Yeah.
He was making a lot of sense there as well. He was putting us in our place in our Liverpool knowledge, wasn't he?
Let's just get him back on, and you guys can just be quiet. We'll have Vinny on for a show. If we can get him back on. OK, we'll try and speak to Vinny again, talk Liverpool if we can later. But, guys, I just want to ask you, because we haven't got Vinny there, before we get to the break, I just want to ask you what I asked Vinny there in terms of it. You know, it's a big game this for Liverpool, isn't it? Aside from all the transfer issues, it feels like a big game for the manager.
It's a huge game, and it's almost it's extraordinary that we're talking about a threat to the future of Arne Slot for a man who came in his debut season and won the Premier League for Liverpool and did such a fantastic job. But it's equally extraordinary that if you look at the bookies' odds at the moment, Arne Slot is the favourite to be the next Premier League manager to be sacked. Even
incredible, isn't
even
it?
ahead of Nuno. You know, even ahead of some of the other managers that we know are under big pressure in the Premier League right now. But I think that speaks to the expectation. I think that speaks to the hugely disappointing and inconsistent season that Liverpool have had. And I think it speaks a lot about how key this night is for Liverpool. They're not going to win the Premier League. It's as simple as that. It's very, very clear. If they were to win the Champions League, if they had a chance of progressing and going to the latter stages of the Champions League and do well there, that gives something for the Liverpool fans to really rally behind, because they've had huge success of late, haven't they, in the last decade or so, under Jurgen Klopp and now under Arne Slot. It feels like they need a reason to get behind the manager right now. And a Champions League progression, I think, is absolutely key to that.
They don't like sacking their managers at Liverpool. They want to be patient. I think at least they will wait until the summer and assess what's happened during this season, because there's still plenty to play for Liverpool. They're still going for a Champions League finish in the Premier League. They're still in the FA Cup, and they could, and they probably should, tonight guarantee themselves a place in the last 16 of the Champions League
Could be in the top four,
without having to have that playoff. So still plenty to play for. It hasn't gone according to plan with regard to what's happened in the Premier League, but they're still in a lot of competition. So I think the summer will be the time when Liverpool will look back and assess what's happened.
OK, after the break, we're going to turn our attention to Chelsea. We're actually going to be live out to beautiful Naples, speak to Gary Cottrell ahead of their Champions League showdown against Napoli. They're playing in the Champions League this evening, and it's news of a departure, Gary. What can you tell us?
Yeah, massive news here in Naples this evening ahead of this decisive Champions League game. News, though, but perhaps we've been expecting, but it's now been confirmed by Chelsea that Raheem Sterling and Chelsea have parted company today by mutual agreement. This is the statement that's just been issued by Chelsea. Raheem Sterling has today departed Chelsea Football Club by mutual agreement, bringing to an end his 3.5 seasons as our player, and it continues. Having signed in the summer of 2022, and of course he was the first blue chip flagship signing of the new owners. It cost just under 50 million, about 47.5 million, I think, from memory. Having signed, it says, the statement, in the summer of 2022, we thank Raheem for his contribution, and we wish him well in the next step of his career. So, in summary, a little bit of a hash of the statement there, but you can see what they're saying, that he has left the club, that it's by mutual agreement, that he's had 3.5 seasons as a Chelsea player, and that they wish him well for the future. They say 3.5 seasons. Of course, first season he did well, second season did well, the third season was surplus to requirements, went on loan to Arsenal where things didn't go according to plan, and then of course this season no appearances whatsoever, not even training with the first team squad in the so-called bomb squad, looking to leave the club at 29 years of age, wants a new challenge, and he's now, by the looks of it, got that challenge at 31 years of age, by the way, to correct myself. By mutual agreement, that means that contract at about £325,000 a week has been torn up. That benefits Chelsea, who don't want to pay that sort of money for a player that they don't want anymore, and obviously it's been decided by Raheem Sterling and his people that it benefits him because he can find a new challenge. We know for family reasons he preferred to stay in the London area. He's turned down moves before because they haven't suited his domestic requirements in terms of his lifestyle. It remains to be seen now where he'll be heading, but we can confirm here in Naples tonight that finally Raheem Sterling is leaving Chelsea after a season at Arsenal didn't work out, and looking for pastures. New club and player agree to terminate his time at the club.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for breaking that for us. Right, I mean, it's come to an end, this saga, finally, by the sounds of it. And really, was this the only option to happen? And is this also the most sensible option for both of them?
I think it is, and we don't know the details of the finances. I mean, Kaveh Solokol was telling us yesterday on Sky Sports News on the transfer show that the total value of Raheem Sterling's contract remaining was in excess of £20 million. So these are big numbers we're talking about here. He was in excess of £300,000 a week and wasn't playing. So it was a problem for him, it was a problem for Chelsea, and they've come to some agreement, some compromise between them where he's not going to get £20 million, but he's had some payoff to pay up the rest of his contract. And it means he's free to sign wherever he wants now. He can take his time in assessing his next move. He's not tied to the transfer window now. And nobody out there should think he's got to try and get a move in the next 5 days. He can take his time, take stock and talk to clubs beyond here for the rest of the season. It's just extraordinary that 3 seasons ago, Raheem Sterling was one of the best and most potent players in the Premier League. 3 years ago, England built their entire team around him for the World Cup in Qatar. 3 years ago, he was England's second highest scorer behind Harry Kane of the players that went to that World Cup. Gareth Southgate built his squad around him. He was absolutely key. And then he flew home. He asked for permission to fly home from that tournament because his house had been burgled back at home. We then heard that the police said there weren't any armed robbers that they were aware of. There weren't any firearms obvious. And they also said that the family weren't at home as well. And that led to some disagreements, I think, with the FA and with Gareth Southgate in particular. And ever since then, Raheem Sterling has been in the doldrums. He tried that loan move to Arsenal, scored 1 goal for them. The last game he played, I mean, he's been in the bomb squad at Chelsea, but no, the last game he played was May the 25th. For a player of his calibre, who should be at the peak of his powers, at the peak of his career, 31 years old, it's a travesty that he's not playing football right now. And if the outcome of all of this means that Raheem Sterling moves somewhere else in the next few weeks at some point, gets himself settled, gets himself playing football again, That's good for him, but you know what? It's great for every football fan. It'd be great to see him back playing at full tilt in the Premier League.
Where do you think he'll end up?
I think the issue now is there'll be no end of clubs that are interested in taking him, but there will be nobody prepared to pay him £300,000 a week. He will have to take a huge pay cut from here, Raheem Sterling, to continue his career wherever he goes. It's pretty clear that he wants to live in the southeast. He's had opportunities to move elsewhere in the country and turn those down. He wants to be with his family, and his family is very, very important to him. So his domestic situation is going to play a big part in the next decision that he makes, I think. In truth, he's a very rich man. He doesn't need the money. And so you can understand maybe why his family comes first from him. But it'll be really interesting to see, after 2 years of not playing very much football, which club is prepared to take a punt on him and say, we know how good you are, we know how good you can be, we're going to take the risk and hope that you can find that form again with us.
I think the phone won't stop ringing now for Raheem Sterling, only because he didn't want to do another loan. He wanted to be a permanent move. Now, that was kind of going to be a little bit unlikely because of the contract he still had at Chelsea. If you think about a potential loan move that could have happened, because he's still got 18 months left on his contract, the wages issue then comes into play. Now, ideal scenario, if a club loans a player out to another club, they want that club to cover the wages. No club is going to cover £325,000 a week. Even if you add to that, right, let's come to a compromise and we'll go 50-50. A club will still think, we don't want to pay £160,000 a week. So now there is this mutual termination, by the sounds of it. He's now a free agent. Now it will go from no base at all from what his wages are at Chelsea, because he's no longer on those wages. It will then be up to the club and him to decide what kind of wages he will take and what kind of football he wants to play and what level he wants to play at. So you would think now Raheem Sterling will have a number of choices, I think, not only at home but abroad as well.
OK, so the breaking news in the last few moments is that Chelsea and Raheem Sterling have finally parted ways, but there is more breaking news in the last few moments.
Yeah, I mean, the Raheem Sterling one is pretty big. I wish I'd done this one before you'd done the Raheem Sterling one. Give me a big up, and it's gone bang, it's gone breaking news. But it's just a development, really, on what we were talking about before with James Ward-Prowse. We know that an agreement has been reached between Burnley and West Ham for him to go to Turf Moor for the rest of the season on loan. I was told he was having a medical earlier today. That medical, I'm told now, is completed and he has passed that medical, and it's just now going to be a matter of time when we get a formal announcement that he is indeed going to be a Burnley player for the rest of the season. OK, right. So West Ham willing to let James Ward-Prowse go to a potential relegation rival. Now, Thomas Frank says Tottenham are still in the market for a new signing in the final few days of the transfer window. Spurs have already brought in Conor Gallagher and Sousa this month.
We are in the market. We do everything we can to see if we can improve the squad. We said that the whole time. I think it's of course, when things is not exactly where we wanted and we have some injuries, you can be pushed and forced to take decisions you don't really want to take if everything was on top. So we need to be very, very smart and cool and calm.
Spurs, they've got so many injuries, haven't they, right? So Pedro Porro is the latest to join this very long list. That is one thing, but the other thing is Thomas Frank's situation and the uncertainty around his position. Does that complicate any business, in or out, for Spurs?
No, I don't think it does. I think, look, every single Premier League club now has a situation where they've got a sporting director, a technical director, a head of recruitment, somebody who's in charge of that, and they look longer term than the manager that they're working for. The vast majority of these guys are not managers anymore, they're head coaches. And so all of the Premier League clubs, we need to give them a bit of credit. All of them have long-term plans. And we might get excited on deadline day when there's a last-minute signing. It's very rare that that's a last-minute signing. It's normally a player that the club have monitored for a good while. They know all of the data around them, and the deal becomes available. It's very rare for a club to just go, we need somebody, who are we going to find in the last few hours of the window? And so the same is the case with Spurs. They will have their long-term targets. They'll have players they want to move out. They'll have players that they're thinking of bringing in. And if the terms are right of those deals, they'll do that whatever. Even though we know there's uncertainty about Thomas Frank's future, and that behind the scenes, the Spurs hierarchy may be thinking we might want to change our head coach going forward in the near future. But also, you look at that injury list that Spurs have got, and they will be reluctant, exactly as we've said with Liverpool, to make big signings and spend big money to bring players into cover for these guys if they're going to be coming back, and then you're going to have a glut of players that you can't keep happy because you can't give them enough games. It's a really difficult situation for every football club, but in particular for Tottenham right now. Uncertainty over the manager, lots of players with lots of injuries, fans unhappy with everything that's going on at the club, demands to strengthen the squad and bring some fresh blood in. It's the perfect storm for them, isn't it? And Thomas Frank is trying to weather that storm as we speak right now.
Not everyone will agree, but I think it's difficult not to feel some sort of sympathy towards Thomas Frank, especially if you look at this.
You can't legislate for that, and it's the second year in a row it's happened to Spurs.
A lot of the Spurs fans, the big complaint has been the style of football. Now, James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski, Dominic Solanke. Solanke's just come back, but Maddison and Kulusevski, two of their most creative players. He hasn't been able to pick them at all. They've not been fit for the entire season so far, and they've still got a long way before they come back. Mohamed Kudus, the big summer signing, he's now been out for a few weeks, and he's still out for a long time as well. So it's very, very difficult for Thomas Frank. Clearly, he needs results, and the Spurs fans will say, well, look, there's enough quality in there to be able to get those results. It hasn't happened at the moment. But then on the flip side of it, you've got a situation where victory tonight, and I'm sure you're going to be speaking to Jamie Weir, who's out there in just a moment, they'll qualify for the next stage of the Champions League automatically. So doing well in the Champions League, not doing so well in the Premier League, sound like anyone?
The other thing is, look at all these players, by the way. They're all first-team players. They are starters. They're not squad members. You know, if they're fit, every single one of those would probably be in the starting 11. You know, we talk about injury problems at clubs. That's crippling.
Yeah, it is. And as I said, second year in a row that's happened to Spurs. You mentioned Jamie Weir, as if by magic, he should appear in this screen. There he is. He's in Frankfurt now. Big game for Spurs tonight against Eintracht Frankfurt. If they win that, then they will be going through to the next stage of the Champions League for sure. But if we just talk about transfers, Jamie, and we talked about it there, you know, they're in a difficult position, Spurs, to know what to do here because of all of the injuries. 2 players in so far in January, but the fans, I'm sure, will want more.
Yeah, they certainly will. You're right there, Matt. And when are fans ever content? That doesn't just go for Tottenham Hotspur, that goes for every football club. But you're right, because they are dropping like flies at the moment. I was talking to some fans in the centre of Frankfurt earlier who were looking forward to seeing Luca Williams-Barnett perhaps play a part tonight. Very exciting prospect in the Spurs academy. Well, he's injured as well, so he hasn't even made the trip to Frankfurt. They've got 11 senior players available tonight, and I think there would be concern that if they didn't do some business in the next 5 days, they would be light for the remainder of the season, especially up front. Look, defensively at centre-back, they look pretty well covered, I would say. Radu Dragusin has returned from a long injury. At full-back, despite Pedro Porro's injury, they can just about muddle through, I think, until he is fit again. In central midfield, suddenly there are a few options. Conor Gallagher has been brought in, and Yves Bissouma seems to have been brought in from the cold. He looks to be sort of back in the thinking. He's played the last 2 Premier League games for Thomas Frank, and despite losing Bentancur and Bergvall to long injuries, I would say they don't look too bad in midfield. But up front, they really, really are light indeed. Sold Brennan Johnson at the start of this month. He hasn't been replaced. Since then, both Richarlison and Mohamed Kudus have gone down to injury. Dominic Solanke only just coming back. He's been asked to play 90 minutes of every single game at the moment. And then you look at the likes of Randall Koulibaly and Matisse Tell, who haven't exactly set the world on fire. I think they are really, really light up front, Tottenham. And I would be absolutely astounded if, once they've got this game out of the way tonight and hopefully got through to the last 16 of the Champions League, avoiding that double-headed playoff in February, that the next 5 days weren't spent desperately trying to get some business done and perhaps bring a forward of any shape or form in through the door at Tottenham Hotspur, because they look incredibly light, I would say, up front.
I agree. Thank you. Right, we promised you news of Douglas Luiz. We promised you more on Jean-Philippe Mateta. And next we're going to talk about both of those players and where they might be heading. Stay tuned.
considering the amount of games that they have and the amount of injuries they had this season as well.
Yeah, I think it is going to be difficult in that sense, but I think it's the other side of maybe we saw for the first semi-final with both teams in pre-season.
Yeah.
So you're seeing sort of the cogs are going in the mind, they're trying to do the right things, but maybe the body's not following. And I think, yeah, you get that in sort of a pre-season feel type game where Arsenal they're in a different position. Yes, they've had a lot of games in the legs, so there might be tiredness, but in a way they'll be sharper. So, you know, I think Arsenal have got it in the bag, but obviously for as far, it's big situation for them to come here. I think it's a big opportunity in this lovely stadium. Floodlights are on now, so it always feels better under the lights, and it's going to be an interesting game.
Renee, in the build-up, she said something interesting about being comfortable with the unknown. So, as a player, how important is it to, you know, read the moments of the game and read the movements as much as they prepped for them, and of course they did study Asfar?
Yeah, you can study, but I think I always had managers that said, yes, the best managers said, I can give you a lot of pictures, but I can't give you everything. So you try and prep in that way, you do the analysis, you do the stuff on the pitch, but you know, especially as senior players, there's so many senior internationals in this Arsenal squad, so sometimes you're going to come across something that maybe you've not prepped, and you need to be good enough in the moment to be able to manage that situation, and obviously they've got so many players on the pitch that should be able to do that.
The first semi-final was a good taster between Gotham and Corinthians. Corinthians as the underdogs and Gotham losing 1-0. What did you think of that?
I love the moment. I actually said it on comms when it was getting closer and closer to the 90th minute, and Gotham were, you know, creating chance but not putting them away. And I just felt for Corinthians this could be a moment, and they had their moment. And obviously the scenes like right over there with all the fans, I thought was absolutely incredible. So what a great moment. Obviously Corinthian fans bringing the noise, and it was excellent.
Yeah, I can say Corinthians fans are quite something. They should create a great atmosphere Sunday in the final. Corinthians will face the winner of this game between Arsenal and Asfar. Kickoff time at 6 o'clock, but we'll be building up to this from 5:30. So do join us here.
Thanks, Natalie. Let's get to Nottingham Forest. Can they sensationally land Jean-Philippe Mateta from Crystal Palace this month? Anton Tolui can bring us up to date from a Forest perspective. And Anton, you spoke to Sean Dyche today. Did he give anything away?
Not massively, but he didn't deny the club's interest in Jean-Philippe Mateta either. So here's where we're at with the Crystal Palace forward. Look, we know Nottingham Forest want him. They haven't agreed a fee, which Crystal Palace want around £40 million for the striker at the moment. But Nottingham Forest are kind of basically waiting in the wings here because they know there's other interest from the likes of Juventus and other clubs on the continent. But Nottingham Forest are hopeful, obviously. The longer this goes on, the more interest he may have in moving to the East Midlands. If he does join, he joins, well, a crowded striker room at the club. And it's something Sean Dyche is pretty happy about.
You've already signed a striker last week. You've got two strikers who scored at the weekend and Chris Wood. That's a lot of players potentially.
You love them strikers. Don't you, Big Mum? We like them strikers, don't we? No, look, you want good players at your club, you know, and we have got them. And if we can add strength to it, I said, you know, a couple of months ago or a month ago when it was building up, you know, the club's made it clear they'll support me, they'll support the team, they'll support the club, and I think the owner's made that clear all along. And he's willing to do that, but it still has to be the right people, and we still have to get the right situation, the right fees agreed and contracts agreed and all that. So no, it's never done until it's actually done. So there's a couple of situations we're waiting on news, but if we can get good players in, we will do, and the owner's made that clear to me.
Dyche also confirms goalkeeper John Victor is out for the season with a knee problem, and you've also got Nicolas Savona, who's potentially going to be out for a while with a knee problem as well. So potentially the club could be after a goalkeeper and a defender and maybe a midfielder to replace Douglas Luiz. A busy end to the window here at Forest.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Thank you very much, Anton. Right, while we're talking strikers, Rob, some news from Manchester United.
Yeah, significant news. There's a lot of excitement on Manchester United supporters' social channels right now about a young Rennes striker called Keita Meite, 18 years old, had the headlines with 3 goals in 6 games in Ligue 1. French under-21 international, big prospect, very exciting player. A lot of clubs are interested in him. Manchester United are one of those, but they see him as one for the future. I think it would be very unlikely they'll go for him in this window. The only way I could see that happening is if there's a big late bid for Joshua Zirkzee, Manchester United accepted it, and then they'd have a bit of money to spend. They're not looking to sell Zirkzee. They don't really want to do any business, but there's an outside chance that could happen. No more than that.
In about 30, 40 seconds, Dharmesh. Almost a done deal now, isn't it? Douglas Luiz back to Aston Villa. How badly do they need him?
Yeah, Anton mentioned it there. We think he's having a medical today at Aston Villa. They need him. They've got big injuries in midfield. John McGinn's injured. Boubacar Kamara is injured. Yuri Tielemans is injured. It's a loan with an option to buy. He was actually sold by Villa to Juventus the summer before last. 3 Serie A starts he made in that time. £42.5 million. Then loaned to Nottingham Forest. 5 Premier League starts there. Sean Dyche said, yes, thanks, but no thanks. We can terminate that loan. And now he's gone back to Villa, which he's really happy about because he absolutely loves the club.
Guys, busy old show there was, wasn't it?
There,
yeah, a lot going on.
Well done, mate. You've earned your corn.
Very good to have both of you here. Enjoyed it very, very much. Right, coming up, it's the Premier League show with Jody Morris. Don't go anywhere.